Welcome to another episode of Locked On UConn. Mahaney Madness. You're Locked On UConn again.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen and second listen every day. This is a bonus pod, so we're going to go through a couple little things. First off, I'm very excited to come back and do an extra show. Literally, as I was putting together the kind of background of the show and getting all the descriptions up on YouTube and all that stuff, got the news that Aidan Mahaney, St. Joe's and first team WCC player, first team, is just sophomore, by the way, coming in for UConn, commits today. I think it first was recorded by Jeff Borzello. Where's Jeff Borzello at these days? At ESPN. So ESPN's Jeff Borzello, and an AP voter, was first on the scene there. Joe Tipton put it out. My buddy Tobias Bass sent it to me almost immediately. So it was, I just saw some YouTube comments for the show that went out at like 2:00. It was something to the effect of, "How old is this podcast? He's already committed." So yeah, not much time passes. It's the reason why I've been telling people, when you make a prediction, it's so hour by hour that it could change almost immediately. So this is kind of a fly by night podcast. Actually, like I said, bonus pod. So how excited are we about Aidan Mahaney? I am very excited. I said in a podcast, you can see it on my YouTube channel, titled, I believe it's Aidan's Arrival, with a question mark, because it was more to the effect of, I think Koby Brea was the sexy choice. It again, kind of reminds me of Nick Timberlake last year, where you didn't really miss out on him because Koby has not, committed to anywhere, and kind of were going with a second choice. They went ahead and offered Aidan right away, likely, and he took some time. He went to Kentucky, so kind of beat Kentucky on that one again. Also with Liam McNeely, so that's awesome. And this was a tweet that I saw by Alex at Ajac1033 on Twitter. UConn is 3-0 in the month of April in 2024 versus Kentucky. Dan Hurley, UConn, check. Liam McNeely, UConn, check. Aidan Mahaney, UConn, check. It would actually just be fun to get Koby Brea too, just to kind of show Kentucky that, listen, we run this show, and you're kind of a secondary program at this point, in particular when you had to go through your not once, not two, not three, fourth, maybe fifth best potential pick in Mark Pope. And then you had to spin it by bringing in Pitino's old bones to talk about how amazing Mark Pope is, who, by the way, this is more directed at their fans. I think it's a good hire by them. So again, nothing against nothing against Mark Pope in general, just excited about landing yet another potential transformational player in the transfer portal here at UConn. So Aidan Mahaney's game is very similar to Cam Spencer. I said this, had a conversation with my pops, who's been on the show. I had a conversation earlier today when we heard that he was coming. That scouts will say to the effect of, why doesn't Aidan Mahaney do more? So I feel like there was definitely a draw that this kid is less of a finished product, that you could bring him in for 2 years versus one with Koby Brea, that you could turn this kid into a potential pro player, because I think he has a lot of work to do. But who better to develop players than this Dan Hurley-led staff? Between Luke Murray's analytics and hotspots of where Aidan will be successful on the court, to Dan Hurley's drive and ability to kind of be that leader, to show, to really kind of show what is possible with his difficult practices. And I just think Aidan Mahaney's never been in a program where he's going to work as hard as this. No disrespect to St. Mary's. Randy Bennett's a great coach. He's been there for years. So it's not about coaching per se. It's about fit and where you can be the best player possible. And right now, UConn really does have cornered the market on that, has really cornered the market on where can people come. Maybe they weren't the best player out their team, or maybe they were, but they're going to be a part of something special versus be the final piece. Because let's face it, I don't think Cam Spencer came in and was the quote unquote final piece, but he was 100% one of the big reasons why UConn won a national championship last year. And so here we go. We got Aidan Mahaney, Terrace Reed Jr. is in the mix. We have Liam McNeely as a freshman. So that gives us, let's look at our grid here. Although before we get into that, let's pivot and go to our next segment where we're going to assume that Alex Karaban and Hassan Diarra are back to look at this roster. We'll talk about that right after this. So that gave me a hot second to look up my good friend Chris Smith's X page. And he asked this incredible question, which I have to say is something that I will put in the chat because, and I'm giving him all the credit in the world. If you don't know who Chris Smith is, friend of mine, went to the same, grew up in the same city as me in Meriden, Connecticut. He is at Bad Choice Milk. The Aidan Mahaney edition means at least one of these Huskies likely comes off the bench next season. Which one? Ahmad Noel or Solo Ball? Right now, it looks like the masses believe Ahmad is going to be the one to come off the bench. And I'm assuming also with that it means that Hassan Diarra in this question is coming back. So we're assuming that both Haas and AK are coming back and what that will look like in terms of the roster, right? So let's do this on the fly. So if I go back to the grid and we go and start talking about who's around. So you have your senior in Sanson Johnson, right? And then you have Alex Karaban coming back as a rising junior. Then you have, we'll leave Terrace Reed alone because he's not going to start. Then I would say you have Jalen Stewart as a starter. Correct? You'd like to think Aidan Mahaney is going to get the starting nod, but I'm going to just put him in to start with. Remains to be seen. Then you have Hassan Diarra. So it's either Mahaney or Solo in that 2 spot. And you'd think that because Mahaney is the tried and true's been through the wars of at least playing Gonzaga 3 times a year. I wouldn't call it WCC a tough conference. He's a player that is been solidified. Has been 2 years playing college basketball, whereas Solo has been in 1. So that's gonna be a tough one for me. I think Solo can be a better player than Aidan Mahaney because I think he can be a pro. Has bigger upside, but I think he'll have to be sold on that role, right? And I hope there's no transfer portal movement from this team because of stuff like this, but I doubt it. I think, again, Dan Hurley's done a good enough job to kind of create that. So then it looks like you have Noel, obviously, as the backup point guard, but also likely would infringe on that and play a really big-time role there. And then you have Liam McNeely as a guy going to be getting some minutes with Jalen Stewart at the 3-4 spot. Alex Karaban playing the power forward / swing 4. Jaden Ross in that mix, along with Singari and Reed to back up Sanson. It's a pretty good squad. I mean, are we preseason? I mean, listen, they're going to give preseason number 1 to Kansas. So let them have it. Are we preseason number 2 or where are we ranking UConn with this lineup? A starting lineup of Samson Johnson, Alex Karaban, Jalen Stewart, Aidan Mahaney, and Hassan Diarra with Liam McNeely, Solo Ball, and Ahmad Noel and Jaden Ross coming off the bench. That's tough, man. That is a tough team. And we're not even talking about Isaiah Abraham, who's a pretty damn good shooting guard / wing that's a freshman. This team is stacked. So if Alex Karaban stays in the pros, gets picked in the first round, or is a late second rounder. Then I would slide Jalen Stort into that position. And Liam would be the starter, if you will. And then Isaiah would be the kind of his backup to get some minutes. Interesting. Yeah. No, I mean, listen, that's a tough team. Three-headed monster at the center, rotation at the 4 and 3 and 4, basically. This isn't 1997, guys. Your power forwards and small forwards are essentially the same in terms of unless you're in the Big Ten and you're kind of trying to play basketball, in reverse. This is efficient offensive basketball. We play good defense. I guess at sometimes, I guess you could probably play Samson Johnson and Terrace Reed together if you play a bigger team. That's fine. Put 3 potential rotational guys together. So I love this team right now. And then if they listen, I know this is not something that a lot of people want, but I just want it because I want our team to be deep, and I want our team to be the envy of all college basketball, where we had like 2 or 3 targets and we got them all. And maybe we'll hear from Dan Hurley and his staff that's like, listen, Kobe's a good kid, but he's not a fit, in terms of what we were trying to do. So already I'm starting to see he can just stay at Kentucky, all this other stuff. Look, if we got the news that Koby Brea was the commit instead of Aidan Mahaney, all the same people would be saying, yay, we got Kobe 3-0 against Kentucky, right? Look, you're not going to get everyone that you want. We didn't get Cooper Fly. He went to Duke. So what? They can take the number 1 recruit and do what with him? Build a team that is going to underachieve again? Dan Hurley has the formula. Trust that they are going to get this done. It's hard to imagine them not being in the mix again for another national title. It's also amazing to say that that's possible considering the world we live in. But they're right here, guys. Like, this is not going anywhere. Let's take a quick break and talk about. I'm going to do another 5 minutes because, like I said, this is a bonus pod, and I'm just excited about getting Aidan. And I think what he does. I'll talk about a little bit about what he does in the next segment, along with maybe there's no more portal for us. Good and bad news, right? All right. We'll talk after this. All right. So what does this mean for UConn? What does Aidan Mahaney and his ability do for UConn? Trying to go over my notes here. So initially, if you go back and look at this, the guy who brought him into St. Mary's is now Dusty May's top assistant, Justin Joyner. So I kind of thought he was going to go there. It's another, nice institution where he could play similar type of basketball. Dusty May doesn't go fast. He doesn't go super slow. It's kind of like in the middle. St. Mary's plays a really slow, methodical pace. Offense wouldn't be difficult for him to pick up, but he put up good numbers, man. He was a first-team WCC player, 14 points. We talked about this, about 38% from 3. His shooting dipped in his sophomore year, but I also feel like that's a product of when you play that slow, methodical game and you're not getting great open looks the way UConn does. Again, people got on me about saying that Randy Bennett's a great coach. Great. But when you play slow, methodical, just like Tony Bennett in Virginia, sometimes you don't get the best shot. And unfortunately, that's the case a lot with a lot of these offensives. So UConn has brought it to another level, and I feel like they do get different looks than you would if you were playing at St. Mary's or Virginia. So I think Mahaney is going to be great. He's got some serious skills handling the ball. He knows how to work ball screens. If you look at some of his skill sets, in those kind of trail situations where he's going to have Samson or Terrace Reed with him, I think we're going to see some some good touch around the basket with some good float game. He's not afraid to take shots at the end of the shot clock, so that's a very Tristan Newton-esque of him. He's risen against tougher opponents. I will say that I want them to get on him about playing his best against worse opponents. Like, don't take nights off against Georgetown and DePaul. Just because they suck doesn't mean you can't be great. So I think that that is going to automatically kind of create competition. Like, Solo Ball wants to start, guaranteed. And if he wins the job, the beauty of a guy like Aidan Mahaney is I don't think you're going to get hear waves from him. If he has to come off the bench, cool. But I think that's also why I trust Dan Hurley so much, because he's the mastermind. Like, I feel like I've talked about how I feel good about them bringing in a guy who isn't quite a finished product, because they'll figure out a way to get things done and find ways to motivate, find ways to make this guy better. It really comes down to an interview I did with Michael Cohen from Fox Sports talking about how they built this offensive juggernaut. To me, the analytics, it's not just shoot threes and no mid-range. It's where you're shooting. I went and shot today at the gym quickly, right? Just to get a workout in. And it's one of those things where I find that I am a much better shooter just visually from the corner and left wing free throw line extended to the 3-point line. For whatever reason, top of the key, I don't shoot it as well. On the right side, on this side, I don't shoot it as well. But going to my left, as I think as most right-handed shooters, that for whatever reason that's easier. And so they have all of that charted. And so this kid Aidan has probably been shown, look how good you were at St. Mary's against such and such team, when you had these type of looks. This is what we're going to try to hunt for you here. So I think that's the biggest part. And then no more portal. It'll just depend. I think they're still going to kind of keep an open mind, because they can still bring someone in that may not be like a big time player. And let's face it, guys, Koby Brea was a starter sometimes, but he was also like a 6 man at Dayton. So if he doesn't get the offer he wants from Kentucky, that it's not like this slam dunk. Don't be surprised if we see him coming up to UConn. He's a New York City kid, and I'd welcome him with open arms. The more better players that get it, the better. This kid is about winning. He is a good kid. Let's not make him out to be the boogeyman just because he's trying to make some money in the NIL world. Everybody that comes in makes money. Everybody. Just because he signed with UConn doesn't make... I refuse to believe that, with the exception of a confirmed report that I got about Cam Spencer taking X amount of money less to come here than going to Miami, that makes sense. But it wasn't it's a lot of money to you and me, likely. But in the grand scheme of things, he was probably like, I'll make that money back in exposure. So smart kid, but not everyone's smart. There's no law against being stupid and saying I'm going to take $400,000 more and go someplace else because I really love Dan Hurley and his staff, but I can make X amount of money at Kansas State or wherever, right? So please just take it easy on that stuff. It's silly. Anyway, listen, I'm sorry I didn't get this before the first pod, but I really love doing some bonus stuff with you guys every once in a while. So here I am saying, make sure you subscribe, make sure you hit that like button on a bunch of stuff, and really helps the channel grow, helps me kind of build the community a little more. I really appreciate all the comments and well wishes, everything that it goes with it. Let's just keep this train going. This UConn train, man, it doesn't seem to stop. And I'm excited about the future. This has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm your host, Mark Zanetta, telling you stay locked in, stay connected. Make sure your toughness meter is always rising. And as always, go Huskies.